Hey, everybody. This is Lynn Bright, also known as JLB. At HopeNet, they call me JLB in the house. So we just want to welcome you to HopeNet Studio 2501, Conversations about Mental Health and Wellness podcast. We're so glad that you've chosen to join us today. And we're bringing, we're going to celebrate and just kind of bring some punctuation to American National Nutrition Month. And we're so glad that our presenter is Hoydell Incorporated, located here in Wichita, Kansas. And this particular episode is being sponsored by a generous private donor. So we're really just grateful for them. On today's episode, we're glad to bring to you Miss Maddi Osburn. B-U-R-N. So don't get that twisted, okay?
Right.
Don't be
no
trying to put don't put that O in there. From Flexible Nutrition. And so I love to just call you Miss Maddi.
That's perfect.
So Maddi, we're glad you're joining us and that you're going to share your expertise. And just like you said to me earlier, you just said, we're just going to have a conversation and you're being kind of sassy with me and all that. I love it. I pray that your personality will come out as we're filming.
Oh, I'm sure it will.
So tell our listeners, our viewers, about Maddi.
Yeah, of course. So I think it's kind of interesting that National Nutrition Month is in the month of March, actually, because the side note is that my birthday's in March. So, I guess it's just meant to be that I'd be a dietitian, right?
Yes.
But just a little bit more about me. I've been a daughter of the king since I was really young, so very blessed in that aspect. And I'm married. I'm a dog mom. I love specialty coffee, one of my favorite things. Banana and peanut butter, being outdoors.
Not banana and peanut butter coffee.
Oh, no. Banana and peanant butter are separates.
Okay, thank you.
But I could have it with the coffee, just not in the coffee.
Okay, because that just kind of all ran together. And it was, I'm like, okay, Maddi, we won't.
Just talking about my favorite foods and drinks.
Okay,
of course I have to.
We have to talk about food, yeah.
That's great. My favorite way to move my body is through running. So, just being outdoors is one of my, I just love being outdoors. Yeah. And like I mentioned, I'm a registered dietitian by trade. I own Flexible Nutrition. It's a group private practice in the Wichita, Kansas area.
And I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
For the courage to venture out, because when I look at you, people may be even watching saying, how's that little girl been owner of a business? So
yeah, it feels really weird, but I just, I had a specific passion for what I wanted to do with my career, and there just wasn't the type of opportunities that I was looking for living here in Wichita. And so I just kind of knew that I had to forge my own path if I was going to be able to do it. So
this is interesting because at HopeNet, you've already been our guest talking to our clinicians and talking about mental health, nutrition, the body, moving the body. I always want to know, how in the world did someone get there? Like, how did Maddi Osburn, which you probably, that's not your maiden name, but how did Maddi get to the place where she said, I have a passion for helping others, and it's in this lane? Yeah. So how did you get there?
I think it was kind of a windy path, but probably I've just always been a helper. I feel like that's just kind of part of my personality. Yeah. I've always known that I wanted to help others. And so that kind of helped me in my direction just in general. But I think that probably the direction more towards maybe nutrition and wellness started when I was at Butler Community College. I was playing soccer there, and I noticed that when I started paying a little bit more attention to what I was eating, like the different types of foods, that I actually started to perform better. I felt better. I was a better athlete. And that kind of started that kind of thinking in my mind of, oh, wow. I love sports. I've always loved it as a kid. This is really cool how nutrition can, impact me as an athlete. I just never really thought about that. And so that kind of started that track in my mind. And then just from a couple other things, like through personal experience. And then my mom actually was a dietitian.
No way.
Yep. And so I didn't even know being a dietitian was even a thing at that time. And, until she actually started talking to me more about it because I was trying to figure out like, what do I want to do? And she was like, well, I was a dietitian. Like you could do that with nutrition and athletes later on and just people. I was like, oh my gosh, like then I'll do that. You know, I was like, I wanted to be in healthcare. I didn't want to be in school for 10,000 years. And I also didn't want to touch people. So I was like, this is perfect.
Okay, that sounds like a session is coming on. Like you may have to owe me some money to unpack that one. Okay?
I know. Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So,
but you know what's funny is that when you were talking, like that's just natural and normal. Like I started putting that together. It was starting to sound real nerdy to me. Okay. And so I wonder, is Madison a nerd? But that's a good
probably
thing.
A little bit.
You know,
yeah.
That's not a bad thing. But I was like, I'm just trying to put that with you. But
yeah.
Also, the last week of February into the first week of March is eating disorder week too. And so I'm just glad that we're able to put all of this together because of some of the things we want to talk about.
Yeah.
I gave you some options about unpacking a lot of things, but I want you to lead us into what you think that we should know about the way we think about food, our bodies, that type of thing. Does that sound like something the way you want to go right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. Let's do it. I have a lot to say about it. So.
Okay, I know. I know that people have a lot of assumptions about possibly eating disorders and just about bodies in particular, about food. And Maddi, the thing I think about is how many times is that plate thing going to change? Like the plate, the food groups, all of that. You know, like how many fruits should you eat? How many carbs should you eat? I mean, I am confused.
Yeah. And that makes complete sense because I feel like there's just so much misinformation, miscommunication out there, whether it's from articles, news that you read online. I mean, that is such a moneymaker, right? Like sensational news, like that's what they put out there. And, you know, the sensational news are the things that are controversial or that are confusing, right? And then, you know, you have social media, which is super confusing. You have people, you know, that claim to be experts, but maybe aren't experts. And then we hear things from like friends and family, right? So I think it is, you know, completely normal. And a lot of my own clients, they come into my office and are really confused, right? And I have a lot of patients that do have eating disorders where a lot of that kind of sparked because of some misinformation that was given and even just kind of maybe wrong thinking about bodies too and how our bodies should or shouldn't be. And so, yeah, I would say that's completely normal. And also, I like to tell people too that nutrition science is pretty new compared to a lot of other science, you know? And so I think it's just like any part of healthcare or science in general about our bodies. We're just constantly learning things, but definitely always good to try to get as best you can your information from somebody who does have that expertise, right? Who does have, you know, to the best of their ability, that basic knowledge. So.
I know you said that sometimes people have entered into an eating disorder because it was sparked by something that was maybe said to them when they were younger. And I just think about even just young little girls who are really concerned about, and I don't even want this to stay in a lane with girls because also I've had clients before where they were men that they were struggling with some issues around body image. So talk a little bit about some things that people say that maybe it can just help us all to say maybe some things that we may stay away from that won't spark something that may be detrimental to someone's health later.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you also bring up males too, because it is true. It's not exclusive to just females. And I think that is an unfortunate assumption that a lot of us might make, is that it is kind of just in the female population, but it's not, right? It is also happens in males, but kind of the first thing that comes to mind is we think about first kind of unpacking like maybe some things that could be said or assumptions about bodies that could impact maybe somebody's relationship with food is a term called weight stigma. And that is essentially when we discriminate or stereotype somebody based on their weight, whether they're in what we might consider a larger body or even a smaller body, just a certain ideas that we have about them. And when we make comments about people's bodies, that doesn't always automatically equal they're going to get an eating disorder, right?
Right.
But because those are very complex. However, I think that is definitely one of the kind of big things that maybe kind of start that cascade for a lot of people. And so whether it's comments like you need to lose weight, or we're worried about your health because you're in a larger body, or, try this diet, this will make you look XYZ. Right. But then also the other side of the spectrum where if somebody is in a smaller body or they have lost weight, praising that.
Yes.
That's another thing too. And so people really tie their worth to their body size. And sometimes for certain people, that can really lead them down a path of, trying to manage that size that their body shouldn't stay in. Like especially kids, I know for females, when they hit puberty, that can be really traumatizing, right? It's already a traumatizing time, but if they get this idea that they're supposed to stay small and then they have puberty coming up, and if they're praised for being how small they are, sometimes that can, lead them down maybe that unfortunate path. So
it makes me think about, like, I'm a clinician by trade, marriage and family therapist, and I don't know, this is, I think, how God made me, but I notice things about people. I notice if they have new glasses. I notice if they wear different new shoes. I know if they got a haircut. I just know
Give me some of that.
I don't know
Give
what it
is.
Me. I think it's about this thing called noticing, that just beginning to notice things. But the thing is, I have said this, and you can like slap my hands later or pop my mouth, but I have said, like, if I saw my client come in and they look different, or they've lost weight, and maybe they're working on that, maybe that's not something that we're working on in the therapy room, I'll say that just freely, like, look like you're, like, you got it going on. Like, what's going on? You're looking like you're smaller. Are you working on weight or whatever? But I never ever say, if someone puts on weight, like, man, what's going on? Because I don't want anybody to say that to me, or whatever. But those things but it's if they've lost, that we're saying things, and it does make people feel good. But maybe there's some things that we should stay away from, and especially even me as a clinician, to like not refer to or not draw attention to weight, because I don't know what that's doing.
Yeah, and I always like to say that you only know what you know, right? And so I think that, I came from a place of literally I was going into my career thinking, I'm going to help people lose weight.
Ooh.
Like that was part of me transitioning from school into being a dietitian. So I am definitely not like, have a clear record of, having a different idea on bodies and maybe how we should approach nutrition. That came from learning. And learning more and more. So you are totally fine, Jolynn.
Thank you. Right? You're not going to pop me in the mouth.
Exactly. Yeah. We can only know what we know. And so, I think kind of going back to your point of, it can make somebody feel good if you tell them and realize, hey, you've lost weight, but also kind of realizing that, what does that tell them? Right? Does that tell them that their body wasn't good beforehand? Right. That maybe they were, they had to be unhealthy because they were in a larger body. And for some people that can make them, kind of go into maybe something like an eating disorder or developing disordered behaviors. And we also don't always know 100% how they lost the weight. Somebody might have actually gotten sick.
That's a good point.
And they might have, tried some sort of fad diet where, they lost so much weight all at once, but it wasn't in a healthy way, right? And so I think that, a way that I encourage people to, focus on, and maybe you do realize that somebody's lost weight, but, maybe even saying something more like, wow, like your skin looks really good. Wow, it looks like you just have so much more energy. Your eyes are brighter.
Okay.
Oh, like you look like you've, you got some tone there. Have you been like going to the gym? So just things that are a little bit more, not necessarily like commenting on how their body's different than how it was before, in kind of that bad way, but trying to do more of like, oh, like you just look like you have more energy, like your skin looks really great. Your hair looks nice, so things more like that is what I would recommend. Yeah.
I know you and I are excited about this movement called Health at Every Size.
Yep.
And I introduced you to Michelle Meinhardt, who used to be one of our clinicians at HopeNet. And
she's great.
She's the one who introduced that to me at first. And so as soon as you started talking about that also, I said, you two have to get together, but I want you to help unpack some of that today. And like, what is this movement about?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's a perfect segue because we kind of indirectly are kind of talking about how maybe weight doesn't equal health, right?
Okay.
And kind of those assumptions that if somebody's in a larger body, that they must be unhealthy, or losing weight equals health, right?
Okay.
And so HAES, or Health at Every Size, it's essentially a framework for care. And
say that one more time.
It's
a framework.
Yeah, it's a framework for care. Yeah.
There should be like music or something that plays like after that.
Let's do it. I'm sure he's got an editor. We can just edit that in there. I love it.
Okay. I love it.
Yeah. So in this framework, it's essentially saying that we believe that all people, regardless of their size, of their background, can pursue health outside of weight loss. And it also advocates for increased access to healthcare.
Okay.
I see a lot of this in my practice that people in different bodies, they don't get the same access to healthcare that a lot of people in maybe what we might consider more conventional, kind of smaller bodies get access to. And so that's also a big part of this, of the Health at Every Size framework, is that advocacy too. And it's built off of 4 different principles. So the first one.
I'm going to stop you.
Sure.
Okay, because, and I don't want you to lose your thought, because as soon as you said some people don't have access to even just healthcare or even to go see like a dietitian or, and I'm like, what does that look like? What does that look like in real life? Because some people may be hearing that for the first time. Like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the first thing that comes to mind with that access to good healthcare is going back to that idea of weight stigma. And we see this in the research that healthcare providers are some of the worst people that might do this. And again, I'm putting my historical self in that same sense of kind of having a certain idea of what people in larger bodies might be like, that discrimination. And so that can impact the quality of care they get. If you literally Google the idea of people that have maybe actually had cancer that went undiagnosed for a long time because their doctor pretty much, dismissed all of their concerns and said, well, you just need to lose weight.
Okay.
So there's a lot of those stories. I'm not just making that up. You could literally just Google it and find it. So I think the first thing with that is the good access to care. And then the other part of that is if we think about things like MRI machines, there are certain people that can't fit into those. And so that's a lack of access, I would say.
Or so that may not be ordered, or that may not be not used as a diagnosis tool or whatever. Right.
So just kind of some of the like instruments that they might have, also thinking about with insurances, sometimes they don't cover certain things, or they increase their premiums because somebody's in a larger body. And that can impact their ability to afford insurance and healthcare. Certain surgeries, there's certain kind of vague BMI cutoffs. And so some people are denied surgery because they are expected to lose X amount of pounds before they can even get, like life-altering and life-changing surgeries. So
you just brought up the acronym, that BMI thing.
Yes. So
Body
mass index, my favorite.
Because, everybody's, it's almost like we could meet people or go up to people like, what's your BMI?
Yep.
But we shouldn't be asking that.
No, that's a good call not to do that.
But I think I've heard you talk about that's not really a great indicator for health.
Right.
And do you remember what you shared, the history of the BMI? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of my favorite things.
Okay.
BMI stands for body mass index. And essentially the way that you get that calculation or that output is you take your height in kilograms divided by your weight. Your weight divided by your height. Okay. And then that gives you that number. And it's from 18.5 and lower, of course, but all the way up to kind of 30s, 40s, et cetera. So if anyone's kind of familiar with those numbers, that's kind of the different like ranges you might see. But the body mass index was actually created by an astrologer. Okay. So not a scientist, not a doctor, not anyone that's familiar with the human body, right?
Okay.
And it was actually based off of white European males. That is the only people that were taken into consideration to create the body mass index scale.
Okay.
So as we can see, that leaves out quite a bit of people, like you and me, Jolynn.
Yeah.
Right? Like all the females does not include us, right? And it was never meant to be used on an individual level. It was only used to, or potentially supposed to be used on the population level when we're looking at populations.
Okay.
But if we think about just even the fact that the only thing that goes into that calculation is your height and your weight, that leaves out so many things, right? Like a lot of what I like to do with athletes to help get this better in their brain is that if we take someone like Michael Phelps, for example.
Okay, the swimmer.
He might be, I would guarantee you, he's in one of the much higher categories.
Okay.
Right? Because his muscle mass is so much. He's got so much muscle. But we're not looking at Michael Phelps saying you're unhealthy. Right. So that's just a good example of how like it's just so limiting in terms of what it can actually tell us about our health and well-being.
That was just news to me.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about, you said something about at the beginning describing yourself. You said, running is one way I like to move my body.
Yeah.
We as therapists are many times checking out or assessing how people are moving their bodies.
Yeah.
And so what can you speak into that a little bit about what movement may even look like? Because I think sometimes when you say, how are you moving your body? It could be like, I got to go to the gym or I got to work out 5 times a day, that type of thing.
Yeah, that's great. And that's actually part of the Health at Every Size framework is life-enhancing movement. And so I really like to use the term movement because I think that a lot of us might have particular ideas about what exercise has to look like. We try to fit it into this little box, right? So a lot of people might think it's having to go to the gym and lift weights, or it has to be running on a treadmill or running outside or, whatever. We kind of put movement in this very, very small box. And it could even be like you were talking about this idea that if I'm going to exercise, I have to go 5 days per week and I have to go for X amount of time.
Right.
But that really limits the ways that we can move our bodies, right? And I think that a thing that's hard for people in terms of wanting to move their body more is thinking that they have to do it a certain way, and they may hate that way, right? Like, I'm sure there's a lot of people listening that hate going to the gym or hate running. I think running is a small group of people that actually really like it, right? We're the weirdos, okay? So, and I think that can really limit people and make them think that they can just never move their bodies or that they just give up on it because they hate it, or they try and force their bodies to do something and they can't stick with it. because they just don't like it. And so I like to look and tell clients, hey, let's destroy that box. Let's open up the world of movement, because movement can look so many different ways. It can look like yoga. It could look like walking with your dogs. It could look like Zumba, maybe even rollerblading. Skating, there's just so many other ways that.
What about vacuuming? Because sometimes I think
chores. That's exhausting.
I'm sweating after I vacuumed.
Yep.
And I'm like, now I don't have to walk today because I have vacuumed every room,
using your arms
in this house.
Too?
Okay, yeah, you know.
For sure. Yeah. So, chores, all of those things, we don't have to fit it in a certain box. And also, it doesn't have to look like a certain amount of time or a certain amount of calorie burn, right? And so that's what movement really tries to encompass is let's first ask ourselves, what feels good to me? And how long of this type of movement feels good to me at this time. Okay. And I think that can really help with the sustainability of it versus trying to come at it from only external things that are telling you how to move your body. It's definitely a lot more sustainable long term when you start from that place of asking yourself, what's going to feel good to me right now? How long of this movement is going to feel good to me right now?
Okay. I was just thinking about some clients that I've worked with, and mainly around body image and how it impacts mental health.
Yeah.
And I just remember one time I got to work with this couple that came in, and those things that you say, you make assumptions about people just based on what they look like. But they came in, and to me, I would say they looked normal, and they had bodies that were enviable, that for the husband and for the wife. But both of them had body image issues to the point of anxiety, even leading to some depression. And I probably wanted, I hope I didn't say this. I'm like, you guys are fine. What is your problem? But it was very impactful in their marriage, okay, even just how they were relating to each other. And so can you speak into that? What's your experience with that, where people look like they're healthy, they're well, but then there's these messages that they've had in their heads, or there's something that they're thinking that seems to be a little distorted.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think what you're getting at is the right definition of body image is that it does not depend on your size or how you look.
Say that again.
Body image and the way you view your body does not depend on your size or how you look or how toned you are. Body image, it's a relationship with your body. And we can work on our image of our body regardless of what size we are. And I know personally for me, I hated my body the most when it was the smallest it was ever been. That was when I hated my body the most. So, and I know we can get more to that story later at some point, but it just, you keep thinking that if I just make my body look a certain way, if I work hard enough and I get it to finally where I think it should be, then I'm going to have the perfect body image. But I think that's a great example of somebody, you can look at somebody and you can go, they must go to the gym, they must eat really well, they look awesome, they have the body that our culture desires, and they still hate it. Right? And so I think that's a great example of how our body image is not tied to the way our body looks. It's all about that relationship that we have with it. It's all that mental health aspect of it. Absolutely.
I remember I was working on my Christian sex therapy certification, and I picked a subject to do a paper on, and I picked body image, and I was just amazed at what I found for America right now there, and especially around genetics and race, because what the articles were alluding to were saying African American women and Hispanic women were allowed to carry more weight because of the culture, where Caucasian women were expected to be less. And so it's almost really weird if I see an African-American woman that is smaller, I'm like, wow, what's happening? But what about their genes? I mean, it's that thing that you don't think about. Like, where does genetics play in? Where does culture play in?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I think if we even go back to the body mass index of realizing that like Hispanic women weren't even considered in that range, right? And, I think it's interesting how every different culture has its own ideal body, right? And how that looks. That's just different. And I love that you point that out too. And I think that really helps us to kind of realize that everybody does have a genetic predisposition for where their weight is going to be and where their body feels most comfortable. We actually even see evidence that up to 70% of our body weight is directly tied to genetics.
Say that one more time, because that's astounding to me.
Yeah. So we find evidence that up to 70% of our body weight is genetically predetermined. Yeah.
Somebody should say, woo, that's a lot. And I'm like, no, some people may be saying, well, I need to get some different genes.
Well,
what about these genetics? I don't know about all that. Or something like, why didn't I get those genes?
Right. Like, I know we've got great technology and great health and, great science, but I'm not sure that's a thing we have quite yet.
We do not want to advocate for that at all.
Right.
I want to, what is your... Like here you are in your profession. What is your philosophy? What's your overall philosophy of practice through flexible nutrition?
Yeah. So definitely, I would say that it's helping clients to have that more flexible approach to nutrition in terms of helping them have a much better way to live their lives and just having a more full life. That's why I actually named my practice Flexible Nutrition.
I like it.
Because I feel like there's so much rigidity in the world. There's so much black and white when we think about food, whether it's good or bad or healthy or unhealthy. And I just think that that's actually really damaging people's relationship with food and even their health sometimes. And so I really just wanted my practice to help people to be able to have that more flexible approach to their eating and to even how they look at their body. A big part of our practice is a HAES framework, that weight inclusive framework, just really
health
trying
at every
to
size,
exactly trying to remove weight as a proxy for somebody's health.
So how do you then incorporate the conversation about food with a client, while you're doing that, to say, I want us to be flexible? It's like, is it saying if you want to have potato chips, you can have potato chips? Or
yeah, that actually is it. And I find a lot of people are very surprised when I say if you want potato chips, you should have it, right?
No, people are they're like, hurry up and get to her number.
Right.
Like, get her, I want the website.
There's a dietitian that told me I can eat potato chips. Oh my gosh. But yeah, no, that's exactly right. Because a lot of times I find clients that, feel like they can't have potato chips in their house, or that they feel out of control around foods like that, that, they want to have moderation around it, but they can't because it's just completely off limits for them, or they feel like they're bad for eating it, or they can't eat it. And what we find is kind of the cycle with that thinking.
Talk about that.
Yeah. And so we start with that restriction of the food, that we can't have it. Well, eventually we're probably going to have it, right?
Okay.
And then we're probably going to go crazy around it because we finally have it. We feel like we can't have it. We're not sure when we're going to have it again. And so we're going to throw moderation out the window, right? So we're going to eat as much as we can in this time. And then we feel bad or guilty about it. And so then we think, oh, I need to restrict it again.
Okay.
And so we kind of go back in the cycle. And so what I find really helps clients is if we start with that permission, if we remove the restriction, at first you're still going to feel a little crazy around it. But the more and more you're around it, this is called habituation. So we become more habituized to the food, or it just becomes less and less exciting the more and more that we have it, right? Another way I like to put this is most people don't really go crazy around carrots, like raw carrots, right? I have yet to find a patient that goes crazy or feels like they overeat on carrots, right?
Right.
And so why is that? Because carrots are always on the table for us, right? That's what we might consider a healthy food, or, something we want to eat more of, right? So in our minds, it is a food that we allow ourselves. It's not put on this pedestal of restriction. And so we've got to get foods like that almost in the same playing field as something like carrots. And that is one of the best ways that I can help people to actually overall eat less potato chips than maybe they would if I told them not to eat potato chips. So
That's a lot.
I know. Whole other podcast, right?
Was it you that I heard say there is no bad food?
Yeah. Well, there is spoiled food, dirty food,
Okay.
and foods that you just generally don't like.
Like sometimes you're eating something, you said, I'm just going to be bad. Like you'll go get a chocolate chip cookie or something like that. And you say, I'm just going to be bad right now. But why do I think I'm being bad? It's because of that thing of what I'm restricting or whatever. Maybe it's sugar or something like that. But the thing is, chocolate chip cookies are not bad in themselves.
Exactly.
Neither is a plate full of lasagna.
Right. Yeah, exactly. There shouldn't be any morality to food. We assign that morality to food. So I believe that God has put all different types of food on this earth for us to enjoy. So yeah, I think
we should just drop the mic on that.
I agree.
I love
Podcast done. That's it. That's all, folks.
So, can you share maybe? I always love it when keeping in mind confidentiality and all of that. Is there like a story that helps to bring some things home, or that just really resonates with you to share today?
Yeah. In terms of like clients, maybe. Yeah. So I do work primarily with eating disorder clients and sports-minded clients. So definitely a story that comes to my mind probably is I had this young female patient that actually was released from the hospital. She was in the hospital because of her eating disorder. But when she first came to me, she had this very flat affect, was very withdrawn, was very prone to mood swings, was very rigid with food. She was very anxious in social situations. She couldn't even eat with her friends in the cafeteria. She also wasn't having her menstrual cycle, things like that. And she told me, a lot of this started because she started seeing diet ads on social media, because maybe some people at school said some things to her. And so, kids, they get that information from somewhere, right? So that idea that certain bodies are bad and that you have to look a certain way. And so that kind of is what sparked that for this patient. But what really brings me back to kind of my work and my passion is, over about 6 months of working with this patient, it's just incredible to see the just stark changes and positivity in her life now. And we did a lot of course, renourishment of her body, but also just really challenging a lot of those assumptions that we have about our bodies, about weight, about food. And, now because of that work, so a big thing for her too was even at her smallest weight, she didn't like her body. So I think that's just another kind of hat tip to that body image piece of things. And she actually started to enjoy her body more as she was kind of renourishing her body. But, now she actually got her menstrual cycle back, which was really exciting. I could actually see her personality come out. She was joking, she was laughing, she's talking about the things that she was interested in. She started being able to actually eat in the cafeteria with her friends, as well as go out to eat with her friends too. So it's just, I'm just so blessed that I have the opportunity to enter into these people's lives and, help them kind of release those chains of being slave to just this constant preoccupation with food and their body. And I just really want to help people to realize that they don't have to be in those chains. They don't have to, be so preoccupied with food in their body that it takes away from all other aspects of their life.
It's interesting that the person that you picked, and I'm really happy for her, that you said something that even when she was at her smallest, and it's, if we go back to our conversation, you said, even I, when I was at my smallest, I wasn't happy with my body. And what was that like to come face to face with that, you know, as you're serving her, but then also having so much more information to be able to help, to be the helper, knowing, well, maybe it's knowing what that was like. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I feel like, you know, we don't always need, as clinicians, personal experience to be able to help somebody, right? Like for you, like you don't have to have depression in order to help somebody with depression, right? But sometimes when we do have shared experiences with our clients, that can help us to empathize more and also kind of understand their headspace a little bit. And it also, for some of us, can just like renew our passions. You know, if we were in that space at one point, we know how horrible that can be. And so I actually ended up developing an eating disorder when I was I believe a sophomore in college. So it wasn't diagnosed until way later, but I kind of look back at that time and, you know, kind of remember in the moment, I couldn't realize it. My brain wasn't fully on board. But definitely looking back, I realized like I was never okay with my body, even when it was at its smallest. You know, I was always nitpicking it, always body check. Like it just, and you think that, oh my gosh, if I just look like her, then I would love my body or I would never have any problems, right? Exactly, that comparison. Okay. But that's just not the case.
But you were an athlete too.
I was, yeah.
So all that going on, So what was helpful for you to emerge out of that place?
Well, I think one of the big things that ended up happening for me, I guess maybe the first thing is that I'm grateful that I had really wonderful friends and family that were on my team that, and I don't think, I think that they had an idea of what was going on, but I'm not sure that they quite, could put the full words to it. But, they did leave me little kind of like, hey, like, are you sure? Like, you want to do this? Or, I'm not sure that that is maybe a healthy way to look at things or, things like that. So I wasn't fully on board to be able to really like check in with what they were saying, but it did leave some little tracks in my mind. And, some other things that really helped kind of pull me out of that was actually learning more, like literally about health at every size and about intuitive eating, actually. And that's kind of a similar framework with the health at every size. But
and just about kind of that some too.
Yeah. So intuitive eating, it is an evidence-based approach to how to eat, essentially, and it integrates instinct, rational thought, and emotion. Okay. So kind of tuning in, so just like the movement, tuning in more to what your body needs when it comes to food versus using just external factors. So like, calorie numbers or macros or a diet. It's more of what sounds good to me, what combinations of foods do I want, what's going to make me feel good, what's going to leave me satisfied. Am I hungry? Am I not hungry? So those are kind of the basic parts of what intuitive eating looks like. So
what just came to me is that the thing about being intuitive, eating that way, to not be left with guilt and shame. Around like I ate something, now I feel guilty about that. And it's back to that cycling.
Yep, back to the cycle
you're talking about. So there's probably someone who's listening even right now today, and probably all of us, as just as human beings, have done something like that, like ate something and felt guilty. But for some people, I think there's a spectrum. There's, right. I'm always feeling guilty, or I'm so guilty that I'm not even going to eat now.
Right.
Type of thing. So
yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you for sharing even just your personal journey with us around that. Are there some things that even businesses can be doing? I know you talked about some things that we should be saying or not saying, that kind of thing. But one time I think I heard you when you came to talk to us, it's like, what is the seating like in your waiting room? You know, like what are some things where people can begin to be thinking about some things differently to accommodate health at every size?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, definitely the chair thing, right?
Okay.
And also kind of the layout of things. You know, if you think about even like restaurants too, there's some restaurants where you're like, I even go in there and I'm like, I feel like a little sardine. Like I'm sitting at my table and like the other table's right next to me, right? And so just kind of being aware of the fact that there are people in different body sizes. And, you know, when you look out in your lobby, if somebody was in a larger size, would they feel comfortable sitting in your seats, you know? Or would they feel like they have to stand because they're afraid to sit down or they literally don't fit into the seat, right? Maybe even your bathrooms, like are the stalls like this tiny, right? Do we have some variability there? I mean, I know there's only so much some people can do, but, you know, and even thinking about like even going to those that might be disabled, like wheelchairs, like is there a place for them? And I know that there's some legislation around that, but you know, so definitely kind of how your lobby looks. Maybe do you have a route like in a restaurant for like people in various body sizes to actually get through? Like, you know, so just different things like that. Kind of thinking outside the box of like, you know, maybe the conventional body type and thinking, oh, all this is going to work fine, but maybe looking at it from a different view or different perspective. Like, can people in all different body sizes come here and use this? So, and even at like doctor's offices, you know, do you have a scale that can accommodate, you know, people of various body sizes, right? So just, yeah, kind of different things like that probably.
This is good. I'm going to wrap us up just a little bit, but I don't want people to get away because we want to make sure that we're putting some things in people's hands or, you know, not leaving them with more questions than help. And so I want to just turn it over to you to talk about what are some things that you would want people to walk away with today, like some tools, something that they could just immediately take that's not overwhelming, but may even challenge them, you know, a little bit. I don't know what comes to your mind that you can share.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think that kind of weight loss and different size bodies can be a hard conversation. There's still a lot of nuance around that, right? And I think I first want to recognize that I do have thin privilege. I don't know what it's like to be in a larger body. And so I definitely don't want anyone to feel like I'm speaking for those people. But I do want to help kind of break down this cultural idea of body size and health. So I always just like to recognize that. But I would say probably the first thing is to just know that, you know, if you feel like your body image is poor or that, you know, you are having a hard time with that, just know that regardless of what your size is now, you don't have to change it to start working on that. You know, you can start working on and improving that, you know, kind of regardless of where you're at. And, you know, I would encourage you to see a dietitian or a therapist, you know? So that would be kind of my first thing. And then maybe the next thing is I would recommend if you're wanting to maybe improve your relationship with food, or as you heard some of these things, you're thinking, ooh, like I can see how maybe that isn't really helping me with how I approach food.
Right.
I would just challenge you to kind of think about some of the areas where maybe you're having some black and white thinking around food. So do you label foods as either good or bad?
Okay.
Do you label them as healthy or unhealthy? And what I'd encourage you to remember is that there's nuance in this life, right? Rarely is anything actually like 100% good or 100% bad, right? I mean, yes, there are some instances, but I would say that most of the time in this complex world, there is some nuance to things. And so why shouldn't the same thing apply to food, right?
Okay.
I think, you know, trying to break down some of that black and white thinking and having some nuance to it can be really helpful. So for example, I think a lot of people might think instantly when I say cake, oh, that's unhealthy, right? But we're not robots, right? Like we don't just, no, unless you are.
I'm not. I don't want to be.
Okay. So we don't just eat food for its nutritional value, right? Like we're not robots. We are complex human beings. And so I just encourage you to think about food more from the aspect of, yes, we can eat it because it is nutrient dense. That can be healthy for us, but also something that can be healthy for us is engaging in a social situation, engaging with others, and eating a cake because maybe it's your mom's birthday or it's your son's birthday.
Celebratory.
Exactly. And so I would say in that situation, that's really healthy for you to eat that cake because you are enjoying your time with others, you're spending your time with others. So there is nuance to things like that. And I would argue, that's a way we can take it off the pedestal, right? Off of that restriction and kind of overeating cycle, is really seeing food from not just a nutrition perspective, but also that it can be social, it can be religious, it can be cultural. We can eat foods for a variety of reasons, and it doesn't have to be solely from that nutrition content. So
good. I love that.
Yeah.
Someone may be saying, wow, that was a lot. But we always want people to walk away hopeful.
Yeah.
And I love the things that you have shared that people can begin to do. I want for you to do a couple of things. Yeah. I want you to end on offering whatever hope you believe is hope for this day in your arena. But I also want people to know how they can find you. Like, where in the world is Miss Maddi and Flexible Nutrition? So can you share those two things?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'd say for hope, there's some of you listening might have experience with maybe losing weight and then gaining it back, maybe losing weight again, getting it back. So kind of going through kind of the cycle, or feeling like you're not worthy because of your weight, or you feel like that you can't do anything because of it, or that, whatever it is in terms of, if you've ever been told that your body's not good enough. And that's why I love the health at every size principles, because it is telling us that there's more to your health and your worth than your weight. There's so much more. And you can today, regardless of your weight, regardless of how you feel about your weight, you can pursue health and you can achieve health, whatever that looks like for you. You do not have to reach this pinnacle that you have in your mind, or that maybe your doctor has in their mind, or your family member has in their mind, whoever it is. You can achieve you can achieve health.
Yeah.
Right where you're at. You can today, choose behaviors and different ways of moving your body that feel good to you. You can choose foods that sound good to you, that taste good to you. And then, how you can find me. So we have our office is located on the east side of Wichita. So it's actually kind of on the cusp of Andover. So we do have that in-office space, but the best way that you could reach us or find me is at my website, which is www.flexiblenutritionllc.com. And you can also find me on Instagram at Flexible Nutrition LLC.
Okay. You are going to be not hard to find.
You just Google Flexible Nutrition. You'll probably have to put the LLC in there. You will have to deal with all those, the I's and the O's and, the E's. But if you just Google that, we should pull up right away.
And you do serve at a West location too.
Oh, yes.
And so your team, you and your team are able to see some folks out West too, and you take various insurances.
Yes.
And what I love about Flexible Nutrition too is that for some people where you think such a service, such a gift is out of reach, that you are considering some people to say, we do take some various insurers. And so we want to bring it within reach for you. And so I appreciate you for doing that for our community.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Okay. Woo. Miss Maddi has been in the house, and it's been so good to have you here. So thank you so much for sharing. And I forgot that we were even just hanging out here together on camera, and people were able to listen to us too. So that means it's a good thing.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
we once again want to thank our presenting sponsor, which is HopeNet, and then also our generous private donor that gave so that Maddi could speak into all of this. So we just want them to be blessed, and we want to thank them too. So until next time, we are signing out, and we're really hopeful that you found something today that just really just spoke to you. And maybe it's that one thing, just do that one thing and move toward health or maintain health. And I look it up, Health at Every Size. It is a movement. And Miss Maddi, if you have any other questions, her and her team at Flexible Nutrition will be more than glad to help you. So as we sign out, this is JLB in the house, and I say bless you.
Thanks for listening to Studio 2501, conversations about mental health and wellness. Studio 2501 is hosted by Lynn Bright. Lynn is HopeNet's Director of Community Impact, a published author, and has been a licensed clinical therapist for over 20 years. This podcast is owned and operated by HopeNet in Wichita, Kansas. HopeNet is a faith-based nonprofit providing a wide range of mental health and wellness services, including counseling, life coaching, and trainings. For more information on HopeNet and to learn how you can help expand our mission, visit hopenetwichita.org and follow us on social media at HopeNet Wichita. Thank you.